Okay, so now let's okay, ran over. Now let's talk about cranial nerves. I love cranial nerves. So now we talked about done with about spinal nerves. Let's talk about cranial nerves. So yeah, cranium, brain, right? 12 pairs, and 12 pairs, they're often abbreviated CN or N versus just C. So when you're talking about CN1, you're talking about cranial nerve 1, not the cervical 1, spinal nerve. And Roman numerals 1 through 12. So sometimes they do use the numbers, but what you often see is that for the cranial nerves, they end up using Roman numerals. And again, there's always a few people who they don't know the Roman numerals. All you need to know are the 1 through 12. You don't need to know the fancy ones like L, C, L, and D, and the 50 ones. Yeah, you don't need to worry about that. You just need to know 1 through 12. And where can you find the cranial nerves 1 through 12? On a simple Roman numeral clock. Again, this is very simple. So for this class, when I refer to cranial nerves, I'll say CN then a Roman numeral. So yes, you do have to know the Roman numerals. This is to make sure that CN1 is different from cervical nerve 1. All right, so then these cranial nerve groups can be classified by multiple things. Now, the primary function, this is what I want you to know for sure. Origin, just know that it's also you can classify, but don't worry too much about for this class. Pathway, I think for maybe more advanced anatomy, but I want you to know what the destination target is and what the name is. So I want you to know the name of it. I want you to know the number, what its general function, and where does it go? Where does it lead to? All right, so then this is a picture of the cranial nerves, and actually in terms of origin, it's pretty simple. If you look, what we're looking at is below the brain, the inferior surface. So if you took a brain and look at the bottom of it, and notice that the cranial nerves, they kind of run like this, like 1, 2, 3, go this way, and then 4, 5, 6. So this is the way I remember it. From anterior to posterior, they pretty much go that way. At 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then this is where it gets tricky. 11 and 12, it boomerangs a bit. It does a little small hairpin turn for 12. So that's how I memorize the origins. I just kind of look, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and just do a little UE at the end. All right, olfactory nerve. So olfaction is the physiological term for your smell. So these are your smell nerves, and this is your nasal cavity. So what happens is during your sense of smell, and we will get to the sense of smell in the final two lectures of this class. Like this is another difference between the Martini and the OpenStax textbook. OpenStax randomly puts this at the beginning of the sensory chapter, but the thing is that when we talk about autonomic nervous system, it's a little intense. And special senses, they're fun and they're relatively easy. So I try to end on an easy topic. So don't worry too much about olfaction until the end. All right, so the sense of smell, and what happens is that chemicals are detected by the dendrites of your olfactory nerves over here. So they bind to these ligand-gated ion channels that send action potentials up here. So the cool thing is that these reach this olfactory bulb at the base of the brain. So yeah, all the chemicals here are detected by nerve fibers that run through the cribriform plate of your ethmoid bone. So if you're taking the lab, your TAs, if they were lucky enough to get a sheep brain that had the ethmoid bone, it's actually they might have had to peel apart the olfactory bulb from that ethmoid bone. And why did they have to peel it? Because all those that cribriform plate has all these foramina, these small little holes. That's why when you look at the ethmoid, it has all these little small holes and passageways to allow those nerves to go through. So yeah, chemicals bind here, that carries the signals up here to the olfactory bulb. Okay, so function, smell. So easy mnemonic. So this person is using a nasal spray. So there's like one finger, and they usually put it to their nose to snort up. So yeah, that's why I think of it. And how many noses do you have? You only have one nose, right? So think of it that way. Cranial nerve 1, olfaction, your nose. Okay, optic nerve. So how many eyes do you have? Yeah, typically you have 2, right? So then 2 eyes. So cranial nerve 2 eyes, right? So optic nerve, cranial nerve 2. And this involves, well, your vision and sight. So compared to the other cranial nerves that also involve the eye, This is the one that is sensory. So this is your sense of vision. So what they do is where the destination, initially it goes to the lateral geniculate nucleus in the thalamus. So this is the first stop for all the things you see. And what eventually happens is that this information goes from the thalamus to the occipital lobe. We didn't talk about in the last lecture, but now we're going to talk about the occipital lobe. And what we have here, so we have the optic chiasm. So notice, I think we're looking at the bottom. Yeah, we're looking at the bottom of the brain. So from the left eye, notice that these nerve fibers from the optic nerve, they're running not only on the same side, but they also cross over. So this is why you have this little X. And actually, if you know your Greek alphabet, what does the Greek letter chi look like? It looks like an X, right? So whenever you see that term chiasm, it refers to some sort of X-shaped structure. So the thing that X marks the spot, and then optic tract. So again, all these nerve fibers compared to like these spinal nerves that run along your spine, the bundles of axons in the brain, these are called tracts. So think of them like all these nerve fibers are running along a track. Okay, so then optic nerves. So notice that they stop at the lateral geniculate nuclei over here and here, but they eventually go all the way back here to the visual cortex. So yeah, optic chiasm, optic tract, lateral geniculate nucleus, and then you have the visual cortex. So this is all the way in the back of your head. So this is my mnemonic. So how do I know the visual cortex is in the occipital lobe? Think of it like you have your eyes here, but you also have eyes in the back of your head. So this is where it kind of makes sense of all these signals getting here. So the thing is that when you get these all the photons and visual information from your environment, it isn't transmitted, the map isn't exact compared to what you're seeing right now. So the thing is that your visual cortex tries to make sense of all that stimuli and make it into something your brain can interpret. So I need to take a little pause right here. Okay, we're back. Okay, so thing is that, okay, we're talking about the visual cortex, or if you've ever, or maybe I'll save it for the vision lecture because we have limited time, but it's, yeah, we'll talk more about the visual cortex when we get to the special senses.